Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Louise Watt. In January, Taiwan's government executed a 32-year-old death row prisoner, drawing international condemnation. It was the first execution under President Lai Ching-te, and the first since Taiwan's constitutional court ruled the death penalty is constitutional, but called for greater protections. Globally, capital punishment has been abolished in law or in practice in 144 countries. But here in Taiwan, the vast majority of people, nearly 85% according to a recent survey, oppose abolishment. To understand this strong support among Taiwanese for the death penalty, we are joined today by Jimmy Xu, a research professor at Academia Sinica's Law Institute in Taipei. Welcome to the show, Professor Xu.
Glad to be here.
Now, you were part of an expert panel called by the government during the Constitutional Court case. The government was arguing that the punishment is constitutional, and you spoke about the effects on society. Why do you think so many Taiwanese still support the death penalty?
I think to answer this question, I think we have to understand that the abolition movement of Taiwan has a history of about maybe a little more than two decades. And before that, Taiwan society has always been supportive of the death penalty as it is right now. So the question is, why hasn't Taiwan's society changed, in the past 2 decades? Because Taiwan's society is in rapid change. We are the first country in Asia to legalize the same-sex marriage. Taiwan's constitutional court, the current term of the Taiwan's constitutional court has been regarded as one of the most progressive in the court's history. So the question should be reversed as to why does the Taiwan society remain the same on this issue while it can change on other issues?
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think this is a question that awaits more research. But if you ask me, I think there is something in Taiwanese culture, and by Taiwanese culture, maybe I'm referring to East Asian culture, Northeast Asian culture. Call it Confucian cultural sphere or so, however you want to call it. So Japan still has it. South Korea has it in the law book, but has ceased implementing it. China has it, of course. There's something, I think, in East Asian culture that sticks to the idea of retributive justice.
And could you delve into that a little more, like the Confucian ideals and the Confucian values when it comes to punishment? What are they?
It's an always complicated matter to really understand the culture. But there are clues from which maybe we can dig into this the founding moment of the culture. So for 2,000 and 3,000 years, the Confucian societies or societies under Confucian cultural influence have regarded revenge, especially avenging the death of your, for example, your father, your elder brother, those that are closest to you, in hierarchical familial structures, as an ethical must. And it has been recorded in history, and it has been seen in Confucian canons, way back 2,000 years ago. And the history shows that it has been so, to 19th century. So the question is, during the 20th century, what has changed and what hasn't changed? But we have to understand that capital punishment in Taiwan has been undergoing change. It is not like for the past 30 or 40 years, it has remained the same. No. The kind of crimes that are subject to death has been shrinking all along, especially during democratic transitions. And the number of executions have been decreasing as well. So overall, the criminal justice system has been more and more reluctant to give death sentence as well as to implement it. So we cannot say that there hasn't been change. People have been growing more and more cautious about using this, being supportive of using this, the death penalty.
And as you mentioned, the abolition movement in Taiwan is really quite young when you compare it to other countries. So is it perhaps just a matter of time, maybe in 2 or 3 generations, more people in Taiwan will be supportive of abolishment?
That's something that we can wait and see, and I would say that's definitely a possibility. You can see that not just the abolition movement, I think abolition movement has quite a influence in the Taiwan's public culture as well. If you see TV dramas or some novels, very good literary works that have been pointing to that direction, just letting people know more about this death penalty and the complexity the complexity of crime issues. And so people who committed crimes are not as reprehensible as you might imagine. Yes, I think there are progress being made in the cultural sphere.
Talking a little more about this idea of punishment. So Taiwan executes by shooting, but it also doesn't tell a death row inmate when they're going to be executed until a few hours before it actually happens. And so people who have been exonerated, they say they spent years on death row not knowing which night would be their last, preparing every night. And critics of capital punishment say this makes the punishment even more inhumane. Is there a reason why Taiwan does this, why it waits until the day of execution before telling someone that they will be executed?
It's a dilemma. So on the one hand, if you specify the date, for example, just wait ahead, and then people count down, their days toward the end of their life. I'm not sure. People are not sure whether that is even a more humane way of treating people, or just letting people, just like everybody else. I might die today because of a car accident, and I don't know when it happens. And so they might have a better chance of living a day as usual, even though there's always something hanging over their head. So I think it's more out of a management concern. But I think this is definitely something that could be subject to policy discussion.
Taiwan's ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, has traditionally been against the death penalty. The previous president, Tsai Ing-wen, during her 8 years in power, which ended in 2024, there were 2 executions, and that compares to 33 executions under her predecessor, who was from the opposition, Kuomintang. Yeah. But President Lai Ching-te, just 8 months into his presidency, he unexpectedly agreed to an execution. Why do you think this was?
I think it's always just a guess, I cannot really put myself in Lai Ching-te's shoes or in the ruling party's considerations behind doors. But you can quite clearly see that there's tremendous pressure coming from the public, especially after the ruling came out last year. And
that's the Constitutional Court ruling.
Yeah, yes, the Constitutional Court ruling. And the Constitutional Court, right after that, we went through the Constitutional Court nomination and confirmation process, because there were several justices whose terms came to an end. And the death penalty was a big issue. So that's one of the main issues that the opposition party were using it as a metric of whether the new nominees were qualified for the job or not. And the result is they did not get their confirmation. So I think the public criticism of the Constitutional Court is quite clear, because the Constitutional Court quite strictly limited the applicability of the death penalty, even though it retained it constitutionally.
Let's take a closer look at the Constitutional Court ruling now. Taiwan's 37 death row inmates petitioned the court, arguing the penalty contravened the right to life enshrined in the Constitution. The court ruled this right to life is not absolute, but it did restrict the use of the death penalty to a narrow category of very serious cases and introduced procedural safeguards, including that any decision must be upheld unanimously by the presiding judges rather than a majority decision as at present. It also banned the death sentence for people with mental disorders. The opposition Kuomintang argued at the time that this may mean the ruling party will push for abolition in phases, that this Constitutional Court ruling, in a sense, was the first step. Do you think that is possible, or with this Constitutional Court ruling, is this matter now settled for a generation at least?
I wouldn't say for that long. If generation signifies, for example, 30 years, but I think at least for another decade, I think this matter is settled for now. And now it all boils down to how the criminal justice system actually implements the Constitutional Court's ruling. And it's very likely that the death sentences will be delivered even more cautiously, to the degree that it becomes, just de facto abolition in practice. It's a possibility, but there's also a possibility that it goes, reserving it for the worst of the worst. So I think both are possible. So I don't think that I think that it waits. We have to wait and see how the overall political situation evolves.
Professor Xu, thank you very much for taking the time to be on Zoom in, Zoom out, and for sharing your insights with us today.
My great pleasure.
This has been Zoom in, Zoom out. You can find more stories from TaiwanPlus News by following us on social media. Thank you for joining us. Do join us again next time.